Going on to managing garden soils. So now we have an idea of the types of problems that we can run into. Let's talk for a bit about what you can do when you encounter these problems. The most important thing is to understand your soil and understand that site. So learning about the texture, the pH of that site, the organic matter content, the layers. Do you have a clay layer down 18 inches? Things like that. So that'll include sending in samples to a soil testing lab to get an idea of the pH and the organic matter and the available nutrients. When you get that test back, you'll be able to make judgments on how much fertilizer to add. If you're having a lot of physical problems with the soil, adding organic matter is a vital practice, and composting will provide that source of organic matter to add to your soil. These are a collection of soil diagnostic tools. The one on the left you may not recognize, but that is how they cut the holes in the golf greens at golf courses. That's a cup hole cutter. And I use that in my research a lot to dig a small little hole and understand what's going on in the top few inches. You probably won't have access to that. But the next one over is a really important tool that you should be familiar with. That's just a standard T-probe, we sometimes call it, or just a standard soil probe. It's about 1 inch in diameter, and you shove that down into the ground and pull out a nice core of soil. It's more important on turf when we're not able to dig around with shovels and make big messes. So if you have kind of an undisturbed site or like a lawn, soil probe can be a really useful tool. It's also good for getting a feel for the different layers in the soil. If you encounter some resistance when you're pushing that down, if you can't even get the soil probe in down 1 inch, you know right away that you have some severe physical problems. The yellow and green box is a pH test kit, which is the only do-it-yourself test I remotely recommend. You can go to garden centers, you can pick up tests that will claim to give you the amount of phosphorus and potassium in your soil, but I don't put much stock in those tests. pH, however, is a little bit more robust. So if you need a quick and dirty estimate of your soil pH, you can go with one of those do-it-yourself test kits. Shovel we're all familiar with, and then the book is a soil survey, which is now all online. These are essentially soil maps, and they used to be published for every county in the state and every county in the United States. But now you can get all that same information, the estimated texture of your soil, the likely pH of it, all kinds of wonderful stuff online. So if you're interested in that, talk to your coordinator and they can give you more information on the web soil survey. And finally, the one on the right is what we call a soil penetrometer, which measures the pressure it takes to push that pointy probe down into the earth. Is useful for finding layers of resistance, but again, the T-probe that we talked about is also very good for that as well. So of all those things, I think that the T-probe and the web soil survey are going to be the two most useful tools aside from the obvious shovel. All right, before you fertilize, what do you think you should be doing? That's right, get a soil test. So soil testing is an important component of understanding the nutrient needs for a garden, or for, in this case, for a lawn. So you want to take a collection of samples from that T-probe or from your shovel, and I would say you need about 10 cores. 10 cores per area, or sample 10 different sites in your garden, and then mix them together to get a good representation. So here, sample 1 has been taken. We have a white bucket out there where I'm going to put all the cores that I take. I'm over here doing sample 3. Now on to sample number 4. And again, all these soil samples that I'm taking are ending up in that white bucket. Number 5. More. Like I say, I think 10 is a number that we use in turfgrass and golf course management. Take those cores out, put them in the bucket, and we mix them all together. So when that bag ends up at the soil testing lab, they're literally going to take a teaspoon of that to have it tested. So you want to make sure that that soil comes to them really well mixed beforehand. You want to fill up the bag. There is usually a line, and the soil testing lab will tell you how much soil they want, but generally we're talking a couple cups full. And then after you say we soil sampled the yard, maybe we're interested in sampling a perennial garden or a vegetable garden, or in the lower right, an area where we're having trouble growing plants. Let's say we ruled out soil physical problems as being an issue. We want to investigate to see if the problem could be related to available nutrients or pH. So we send in a soil test for chemical properties. So we take our samples from our lawn, our vegetable garden, perennial garden, the problem site, and we fill out our submission form that you can see there on the table. And it's very, very important to indicate the area, lawn versus vegetable or flowers. And so the soil testing lab will give different recommendations based on what you indicate the soil is from, because different crops have different nutrient needs. When you get those recommendations, they may say you need phosphorus but no nitrogen, or you need nitrogen but no phosphorus. So you use that information to select the most appropriate fertilizer to use. This is a shot of the front doors of the University of Wisconsin Soil and Plant Analysis Lab in Verona on the far west side of Madison, near the West Madison Agricultural Research Station. And at that soil testing lab, the routine procedure will give you soil pH, something they call the buffer pH, which helps them to find out how much lime you would need to apply, the organic matter content, and the available phosphorus and potassium. That's a routine test. Other tests are available: calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and micronutrients, which are often insufficient supply. So they're usually not required, so they're not included in the routine. Don't really have a good test or a need for some of the other nutrients that are shown here. Nitrogen, unfortunately, there is no reliable soil test for nitrogen. Iron, copper, chloride, molybdenum, nickel are some of the micronutrients that we don't have good tests or needs for yet. But they also do problem solving. So instead of doing the mason jar test for soil texture, they can do a soil texture analysis for you. They can look at the salt content. So maybe near a roadside you have some dead grass or garden that's not thriving, and you wonder if it has something to do with the road salts that are applied in the winter and the spring. Lead is a very common contaminant of soils in urban areas. This laboratory will give you an indication of how much lead is in your soil, which I highly recommend before putting in a new garden, or if you are gardening in an urban area, have that soil tested for lead. I've been working on a project in Milwaukee where we're surveying the lead content of soils in a couple neighborhoods and finding quite high lead levels in some of these gardens. So it's an emerging issue that we need to increase our awareness of, is understanding the lead content, because we want to make sure that we're being safe and especially not exposing children to lead contaminated soils.